What happens when a quiet man on his own land gets fined by the HOA queen for helping a hungry neighbor? You won't believe how her little dog ends up walking nowhere. Let me tell y'all something right now. I didn't grow up looking for trouble. I grew up learning how to handle it when it came stomping through the front yard like it owned the place. And trust me, when trouble's got a perm, wears pink joggers with pearls, and walks a yappy little dog named Muffin on a rhinestone leash, that's a whole different level of ridiculous. My name's Miles Jefferson. Retired mechanic, 59 years old, been living on this piece of land going on 27 years. I got 5 acres out in Eastwood Pines, just outside of city limits. Not fancy, not flashy, but it's mine. Bought and paid for with busted knuckles and long shifts. I grow my own vegetables, take care of a few chickens, and every now and then, I do a little hunting. Nothing crazy, just enough to stock my freezer and help out folks who don't have as much. That's what I was doing that morning. Nothing wild, just checking a couple of snares out near the tree line. My neighbor Miss Clarice, bless her heart, told me last week her food stamps ran short and her grandbaby needed dinner. So I said, "Don't you worry, I'll see what I can do." Ain't like the supermarkets are handing out free protein. The air was crisp, birds were chirping, and I had a thermos of hot coffee in my hand. Just as I was reaching down to check a trap, something simple, just for rabbit, I heard a voice. Not God. Worse. Karen. You know this is against the HOA guidelines, right? Now let me explain. Karen Henderson is the president of our neighborhood HOA. Been so for the past 6 years, and if you ask me, that's about 6 years too long. The woman walks around like she's running for mayor of some imaginary kingdom. Nose up, clipboard out, lips pursed like she's trying to suck the joy out of every living thing within 50 feet. She's the type that counts the cracks in your driveway and files complaints about your mailbox being too rustic. I once saw her threaten a guy for having unapproved Christmas inflatables. Said it violated the visual peace of the neighborhood. Whatever that means. So there she was, strutting through the brush in pristine white sneakers that had no business being that close to real dirt. Muffin was yapping and tangling herself around her owner's ankles like a furried boomerang. I stood up slow. "Karen," I said real calm, "this is my land. I'm well outside the HOA perimeter. And I've got legal permits." She pulled out her phone like it was a badge. "Well, I recorded you. And I'm filing an incident report. There are children in this community, Miles. Guns and traps don't belong near family homes." I blinked. "Ma'am, those family homes are a quarter mile that way. I'm not anywhere near your jurisdiction." She smirked. That smug little tilt of the head that makes you want to scream into a pillow. "We'll see what the board says." Next morning, I wake up to a bright yellow envelope taped to my gate. Notice of violation. $250 fine for unauthorized hunting activity. I damn near dropped my coffee. Now let's talk logic. 1. I'm outside the HOA lines. 2. I'm licensed. 3. I didn't fire a single shot. 4. Even if I did, ain't nobody hearing that but the squirrels. So this was personal. I marched over to the HOA office that afternoon. It's a converted guest house behind Karen's property, complete with a fake marble plaque that says, Community Leadership Center. Like we all live in some gated utopia instead of a patch of dirt and weeds with decent views. Karen was already there, filing her nails and talking about some poor teenager's lawn length like it was a national crisis. When she saw me, she perked up like a cat near tuna. "Mr. Jefferson," she said, fake sweet. "I assume you're here about the fine?" I looked her square in the eye. "You assume right. I want to know what makes you think you can fine me for something I did on my own land, with a license, following the law." She shrugged like it was no big thing. The bylaws state that any dangerous or aggressive behavior, including hunting, trapping, or discharging firearms within sight or sound of the community, can be penalized if it disrupts the peace. Within sight or sound? I raised an eyebrow. Next you'll find me for chewing too loud. She actually smiled. If enough neighbors complain, we'll certainly consider it. I left that office with steam coming out my ears. And wouldn't you know, over the next few days, it got worse. Suddenly, folks were giving me the cold shoulder at the gas station. Miss Evans from down the street told me her grandkids couldn't play outside anymore because someone was hunting in the woods. Someone. Like I was a menace to society. One night, I caught Karen standing by my fence, holding Muffin while staring at my land like she was inspecting a crime scene. She saw me watching and called out, "I'm checking for violations." "Lady, unless my tomatoes are breaking laws now, you've got no business here." And then, cherry on the Sunday, the HOA sent out a newsletter calling for community vigilance against rogue property use. Didn't name me, but they didn't have to. Everyone knew. So let's recap. I help a neighbor by catching dinner, get ambushed by a woman who thinks she's the queen of Eastwood Pines, fined for breathing too loud, and publicly painted as some kind of wild man. For what? Being decent? The worst part wasn't even the fine. It was the way people started looking at me, like I was some problem that needed fixing. I built my life here, worked my land with my bare hands, paid every tax and permit. But suddenly, all that didn't matter. All it took was one woman with a clipboard and a vendetta. That night, I sat on my porch, staring at the trees where I used to walk in peace. I watched the wind move through the leaves and thought about all the good I'd done, and how fast folks forget it. And somewhere deep down, I knew something had changed. Karen might have thought she'd made her point. But this wasn't over. Not even close. I wish I could tell you the nonsense stopped with that fine. I really do. But that was just the opening act, the dress rehearsal for the real mess they had planned. You'd think people would back off after humiliating a man in his own community. Not here. Not when Karen had her claws in the board, and the board had its claws in everybody else. It started subtle. My mailbox suddenly didn't meet neighborhood standards. That thing had been standing there longer than Muffin's legs were, and now it was a problem. Then I got a notice about unauthorized structures. They meant my chicken coop, which had been approved 5 years ago. Oh, and let's not forget the classic lawn maintenance warning. Because a patch of wildflowers near the fence line apparently threatened property values. You'd think my daffodils had criminal records. At first, I tried to reason with them. I gathered up every permit, every old email, every signed document showing I had the right to everything on my land. I brought it all to the HOA office, sat down across from Karen, calm, respectful, and explained it. She barely looked up from her laptop. "Well, community sentiment has shifted," she said, like she was quoting scripture. "What might have been overlooked before is no longer acceptable. We're moving toward a more refined aesthetic." Refined? That was her favorite word lately. You know what's funny? Refined never seemed to mean the folks with money and connections getting fined. Nope. Just the folks who minded their business, worked hard, and didn't fit her picture-perfect brochure fantasy. So I asked her straight, "Karen, this ain't about chickens or flowers. What is this really about?" She looked at me like I'd asked why water was wet. "It's about maintaining harmony." Harmony. Yeah, sure. Harmony must mean silence, from people like me. Things snowballed after that. My trash cans got flagged for being visible from the road. I came out one morning to find orange stickers slapped on my fence posts like I was running some illegal operation. A week later, a citation showed up for potential safety hazards. And get this, It cited tree roots. Tree roots? The same oak I planted with my late wife, the one that gives shade to half the yard? Now it's a risk. I was getting boxed in, one petty rule at a time. And it wasn't just paperwork. My neighbors, folks I'd shared tools with, fixed cars for, started acting different. Eyes down when they passed. Quick conversations turned cold. Some didn't even wave anymore. Then came the neighborhood meeting. Now, I hadn't set foot in one of those since the infamous bird feeder debate of 2017. But this one? Karen made sure I got a personal invitation. Certified letter and everything. So I showed up, boots shined, shirt tucked in, folder under my arm. Walked into that community center like a man going to court. The room was already packed. Karen stood at the front like she was hosting a talk show, smiling like butter wouldn't melt. As soon as I sat down, she cleared her throat. "We're here to discuss ongoing violations and community concerns," she said, looking directly at me like I was a live exhibit. "Some residents have expressed discomfort regarding certain activities on private lots that affect the peace and reputation of Eastwood Pines." A man in the back, Tom something, I think, piped up. "I've seen him with traps. What if a child gets hurt? I hunt on my own land, legally," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I got papers to prove it." Karen smiled that smile, the one that says, "I'm about to bury you politely. We understand, Mr. Jefferson. But legality isn't the only concern. Perception matters. Safety matters. And frankly, the board has received over 12 complaints." 12? From who? Muffin and her reflection? I stood up. "Let me say something." The room went quiet. I looked around, at the people I'd helped jump cars in the winter, whose kids I'd taught how to fix bikes, whose groceries I'd carried when they got too heavy. "I have lived here longer than most of you," I said, voice steady. "I have never hurt anybody, never disrespected a single person on this street. All I've done is take care of my land, share what I have, and follow the law. If that's not enough anymore, maybe the problem ain't with me." Dead silence. Karen tapped her pen against her clipboard like she was timing my downfall. "We'll take that into consideration," she said, like she was doing me a favor. I left that meeting with heat in my chest. Not just anger, heartbreak. These folks let one bitter woman tell them who I was, and they listened. I didn't sleep much that week. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw warning letters and cold stares. And I started thinking, not just about Karen, but about the system that gave her the power to turn my life into paperwork. A system that let community standards be weaponized against people who didn't fall in line, against people who didn't decorate their porch the right way, or didn't bake sugar-free cookies for board meetings. But the final straw? That came on a Sunday afternoon. I was fixing the hinges on my gate when I saw Karen walking down the path behind my yard, again. Muffin yapping, Karen scribbling. I stayed calm. I'd had enough fights for 1 week. She stopped, turned, and called out, "You've got 24 hours to remove the chicken coop." HOA policy was updated last night. No livestock, even on outer properties. That coop had been there 10 years. She grinned, like she'd just won a trophy. That includes hunting, by the way. We've requested county enforcement. I didn't say a word. Just watched her walk off like she ran the place. And maybe, in her mind, she did. That's when it clicked for me. This wasn't just about me. It was about how easy it was for people like her to rewrite the rules, to push people like me out under the guise of harmony. And I was done playing nice. This is the turning point. Everything you've been waiting for, it's right here. Stick around to see how I stopped letting them walk all over me and started walking tall again. You ever reach that point where you're just plain tired, Not in your body, but deep in your spirit. That bone-deep kind of tired that comes when you know you've been disrespected, stepped on, and talked down to for just a little too long. That's where I was. Karen had crossed every line she could find, and then redrew them just so she could cross them again. And this HOA board? They played right along, like a marching band at her private parade. All while I stood on my own land, feeling more like a trespasser than a homeowner. But see, what Karen didn't know, or maybe just refused to believe, was that I'm not the type to fold. Never have been. My mama didn't raise a man who'd let his name be dragged without standing up and brushing the dirt off. And my daddy didn't teach me to work this land just so I could watch someone else run it like a private kingdom. So I pulled out every file, every photo, every permit I'd ever kept. I spent 2 whole nights going through dusty boxes in the shed, sipping coffee till my hands shook, looking for that one document I knew would make all the difference, and I found it. A land use agreement signed by the county back in 1998, stating that my 5 acres were zoned agricultural and recreational, with full legal rights to hunt, build, and maintain livestock for personal use. Stamped, notarized, official, and tucked inside the same folder? A map. A county-verified map showing my land extended 30 feet beyond the border Karen thought was hers, including the very strip of forest she kept marching Muffin through like it was a dog show runway. I'm telling you, I held that paper like it was the final puzzle piece to my freedom. Next day, I went straight to the county zoning office. Met with a sharp young fella named Lewis. Showed him everything. He looked through it once, raised an eyebrow, and said, "Sir, not only is this valid, they're violating your property rights." I nodded. Thought so. We filed an official grievance that same day. Meanwhile, I posted a sign at the edge of my land, professionally printed, bolted to a metal post, crystal clear. Private property. No public access beyond this point. Violators will be prosecuted. I made copies of my land plat and distributed it to every single house on the street with a little note. If you've been walking your dog behind my fence, you've been trespassing. Don't let Karen take you down with her. Let me tell you, I ain't seen so many leashes yanked back so fast in my life. And then came the town meeting. Not the little HOA get-togethers in Karen's guest house. No, this one was held at the Township Civic Center. Real microphones. Real records. Real consequences. Karen walked in like she always did, bold, smug, that little purse swinging on her elbow like a symbol of superiority. She didn't know I'd be there. She didn't know I'd brought the receipts. When the zoning officer read out the official declaration confirming my land rights, and that the HOA had no legal authority to regulate my activities, Karen's face went from confident to confused real fast. And when they confirmed that part of the trail she walked Muffin on, that was my land, she looked like she'd swallowed a lemon whole. I stood up, not to gloat, but to speak the truth. I've lived here for nearly 3 decades, I said, voice steady. I've followed the law, helped my neighbors, and kept to myself. I didn't pick this fight, but I'm sure not afraid to finish it. This isn't about rules. It's about respect. And I'm taking mine back. The crowd clapped. Loud. And then came the kicker. The county suspended the HOA's jurisdiction over my land permanently. Their bylaws would no longer apply to my property. Any further harassment? Grounds for civil action. Karen didn't say a word. Not a breath. She just sat there, quiet, deflated. For once, the Queen of Eastwood Pines didn't have a clipboard to hide behind. But I wasn't done yet. I filed a cease and desist order against Karen personally. Included video footage I had from my porch cam, of her trespassing, of her taking photos, and even one where she let Muffin relieve herself right next to my tomato beds. That video hit harder than a courtroom drama. The order passed. Effective immediately, Karen was barred from stepping foot on my property or behind it. Which, funny enough, meant her little dog walking path? Gone. No more strolls through my trees. No more inspections. No more muffin patrols. And wouldn't you know, a week later, I saw her wandering around the sidewalk in front of her house, looking absolutely lost. Muffin just stood there, confused, looking for her usual route. But the signs were clear. My land was off limits. For good. Now here's the part that really sticks with me. A few days after that, a family I hadn't seen much before stopped by. Young couple, new to the area. The husband said, "Mr. Jefferson, we just wanted to say thank you. We read the newsletter. Saw what you stood up for. We're glad someone finally pushed back." And just like that, the tide started turning. Folks who'd kept quiet. They started speaking up. Tired of Karen's rules. Tired of being policed over flower pots and fence colors. Tired of acting like one person's opinion was law. They started showing up to meetings. Started voting. Started asking real questions. I didn't burn bridges. I just reminded people that they had legs to walk over them if they needed to. As for me, I got my peace back. My coop stayed. My wildflowers bloomed. And yeah, I still hunt on my land. Legally. Respectfully. Quietly. And Muffin? Well, poor thing's walking the same 3 squares of sidewalk now, dodging sprinklers and fire ants. But hey, if her owner had stayed in her lane, her dog could have kept walking in mine. Justice doesn't always come easy, but when it does, it hits deep. If you've ever felt stepped on, pushed aside, or silenced in your own home, remember this: you've got more power than you think. You just have to stand tall, even when the dogs are barking.